Hi, I'm going to welcome my guest today, Bobby Morton. I'm so glad that you're joining me today. I'm going to say hi to you and to Jared in spirit, because I know he's always around you. Um, and then to just kind of lead into before you start speaking, I'd like to talk about your profile, your Facebook profile. You have a beautiful quote that I think really talks about the spiritual nature of who you are. And that is sometimes your life will go on a journey. It will be the longest journey you have ever taken. It is the journey to find yourself. And that's Catherine Sharp that has written that you put on your Facebook post. But I know you through the grief community, and I know that you're a man who is deeply connected to spirit. And you're a self-described person as someone who sees the glass three-quarters full rather than half empty. So I like that as well. That really caught my attention. And then you've also described that you have had a fortunate life. But we're here today to talk about life-changing experiences. So could you tell us briefly about your life before this life-changing experience that we'll get into shortly?
Sure, Basha. First, I'd like to say hello to you and hello to your son, Rich, in spirit.
Thank
He and
you.
Jared connected the two of us.
That's for sure.
Um, well, let me see. I was born in 1954. I grew up in a middle-class environment during the 60s with the war in Vietnam and all the social unrest that was going on. And I guess I was a person of those times, so I was sort of a free spirit. I took up meditation. I became very spiritual. I was very interested and drawn to the indigenous cultures of the world more than the religious aspect. So I've always been spiritual. I traveled a lot during my late teens, early 20s, and saw a lot of the country and enjoyed traveling. Then I settled down. Life kind of got in the way. Started a business, ran the manufacturing business, ran that for 30 years. I have two children. A daughter, Angela, and Jared in spirit. He passed 5.5 years ago. Suddenly, he succumbed, lost his battle to the disease of addiction. Don't know exactly what happened. Um, it's something that I will find when I get to see him again.
Mm.
So I've always been very fortunate. It seems like the universe has always brought things my way. I have a very positive outlook. I believe that positive energy attracts positive energy. And, you keep your vibration high, that stay close to spirit, love nature, and all that.
Awesome. So thank you for that little synopsis. I know it's a lot of territory to cover, but I think what you set up is really important because, you know, you're a seeker and that was there before. And then you got, like you said, busy with life, which a lot of us do. We just do the things that we need to do to support our families and kind of do that in those middle years. But then what was the life-changing experience that happened that really was that thing that you knew you couldn't return to the person that you were? What happened?
Jared passed away suddenly and unexpectedly on October 27th of 2014. And I was, for the first time, I was destroyed. It rocked rocked my soul, and I was very broken. Um, Foundation. I believe that I could not survive his passing. I went into, I guess, a state of shock. My body responded with, my blood pressure going up. I couldn't sleep. It just all my beliefs and everything were just completely shattered and destroyed. And I realized at that point that I had a lot to deal with, and I had always trusted my instinct. Things had always come easily to me. I thought that I was in control of everything. I thought, I could conquer anything and control my destiny, but I realized that that was just an illusion at that time, because I realized I had control over absolutely nothing. I couldn't save my son, because that's not supposed to happen. Children are not supposed to pass before you. So that completely shattered me, and I went into I call it my 19 to 20 months of a personal, I'll use the word hell, because I had to go back and look at all aspects of my life. I had to deal with probably issues that I'd been setting aside or ignoring or bypassing. Deal with anger, blame, shame, guilt, you name it. There, as you know, that grief is a very, very tough work. It's personal inside work that you have to do on yourself. And I believe that you have to go through that journey to get to the other side. There's no spiritual bypassing it or anything like that. And I know that I have done a 180-degree turn. If you had told me 6 years ago that I would be anything like I am now, you are nuts. Because I was fortunate enough to retire early. I was out golfing in the good weather and skiing in the winter. So I was leading a pretty happy existence until that happened, and that completely changed my world as I knew it.
Wow. So the 19 months of hell. So how would you characterize that? Like, I mean, I know for myself, I just imagine that there are some things that are similar in you just have to let go. Like you just have to let go, and you keep having to let go, and then it's like, well, what am I actually holding on to? What's actually keeping me standing up? Was it similar for you?
Oh, it was very similar, Basher. I First of all, I knew that I was not going to survive Jared's passing. I had, my blood pressure went through the roof. I had to go on blood pressure medication, anxiety medication, all sorts of things for the first time in my life. When I was at 6 months out, I started coming out of the fog. And at that point, I thought I was having a nervous breakdown. So I went to a counselor for the first time in my life. And I thought she was doing absolutely nothing for me because I was doing all the talking. She was just listening. And now that I also counsel people, I realize that's what you do. You hold somebody's story and just listen, and that helps them to work through it themselves. And you may hear somebody say something 3 or 4 times, so perhaps you may, well, I've heard you say this or heard you say that. And I thought I was going to go to a therapist and I was going to be fixed and it was going to be all over and I was going to be as good as new, but that's not the case.
Like you'd have a map or a plan, and okay, do this and then do that, and then you're on your way, and you'll be done with it.
Exactly. That's for sure. So I went through that, and I did the hard work of grief. I mean, I started journaling, and the whole time I knew where Jared was. He came to me the day after his funeral. Uh, my spirit animal is the hawk, and he came to me as a hawk the day after his funeral, flew over my head, and as I was walking up the driveway, and kind of soared and landed on the boat and sat there, and then jumped up to the tree and stayed there. And he came back the next day, and he circled the house for it seemed like forever. It was probably 8 or 10 minutes, and he was screeching and just kept circling around.
Mm.
And he just kept coming every day. And I knew it was him. I knew he was sending a message that he was fine. And but I still went through that missing missing him physically.
Oh my gosh. And then
Uh,
also to taking uh taking that experience and then allowing that to really be truth. I know for myself, I had similar experiences, not a hawk, but other things that were clearly connected to Richard. And I thought I was losing my mind. I mean, I really thought, oh my God, my colleagues, like, they're going to think I'm off the deep end here. And I had to let all of that go. I had to let them go. I had to let my career go. I had to let all of that go to actually be, to find my truth of who I am. And that's the journey. So I can so relate to what you're talking about that 19 months of hell, because you don't know what it's going to be like on the other side. Very
mm,
powerful. So,
yeah, that
so
truly is a journey, Basha. I mean, and you have to get to a point where you trust that everything's going to be okay, and it doesn't just come naturally. I and Jared kept nudging me. He was
Mhm.
pushing me. I mean, I became a leader of a compassionate friends group at 10 months out. It's the only one. I live on Cape Cod. It was the only outreach that I had. I was not connected to social media, so I didn't know there was a world uh, bereaved communities out there, or people that you could contact. I found the TCF chapter, and it was a meeting once a month, and I could go there, and there were people there that understood what I was going through. Where all of my friends, they kind of disappeared after 2 or 3 weeks. Life was back to normal, and I was supposed to be over it. And as you well know, there's no getting over it. It doesn't go away. It's something you learn to live with. Um, the
I think it
leader
might
of the
be difficult for men also, more so than for men as well, because the expectation is that, you guys, you're going to get on with your life, you're going to move on, and, and you should do it pretty quick. Did you feel that kind of pressure?
no, because I wasn't raised that way, but yes,
Okay.
societal pressure, uh, social conditioning expect men not to grieve. Big boys don't cry. I threw that all out the window. That didn't mean anything to me. Fortunately, I was raised by a dad that wore his emotions on his sleeve, and so I guess I'm not the atypical man. And at conferences, I give a workshop on men and grief, and just to get men talking, because a lot of men don't talk. And I was fortunate with the chapter that I was running, that I ran that chapter for 3 years. Probably 40% of the members were men that were coming, and I don't know if it's because I was leading it. It made them feel more comfortable to open up. I don't know, but um, it's definitely like that. There's social conditioning with men that they're They're kind of like the hidden grievers, but we do grieve just like women do. I just threw all that baloney out the window.
That's
But
great.
I've always been true to who I am. So.
Hmm. That's fabulous that you were, that you were able to give yourself that, because it's really a gift too, that, when you have the strength to uh, go through that darkness and be, be willing to take the risk of that you'll get through it and you'll actually survive that once you decide you want to survive. I think that's something that happens early on too, is that question, do I want to survive? Can I, is my life going to be, worth living without this person in my life, without my child?
Yeah, well, I never had the feelings that I didn't want to survive. I just didn't think that I would. And, through Jared's nudging and to be the best, I've always tried to give everything 150%. So I was nudged to go to a national conference and take a leadership training course. So I went to a national conference. It was 2016, and I remember the exact moment found where I found hope. Um, the first two workshops I went to, I met, they're still to this day, two of my best friends, and um, I actually gave myself permission in the second workshop to laugh for the first time. I couldn't stand laughter. I couldn't stand listening to anybody laugh, but I actually walked out of that workshop laughing with a big smile on my face, and
Wow.
I knew right then I was going to be okay. So that was where it all shifted for me. And I've later come to realize that the more you allow the pendulum to swing in one direction by embracing your grief, um, the more the pendulum gets to swing in the other direction. And I'm a big proponent of post-traumatic growth. I believe that a lot of growth and all that can come out of the grief journey. So I was very fortunate, to have had that experience, and that's where my growth started happening. And now I call it soaring. I came out of the labyrinth. It's kind of like walking the labyrinth. You go down into the liminal space, kind of like a caterpillar does into a cocoon. It's a safe place where you can, that's where all transformation takes place. And when you start coming out of that, you're allowed to fly if you can
Mm.
get to that point. And I have a project that I started called Hope Soars, because of the hawk. And I truly believe that there's collateral beauty that comes out of of grief if you allow yourself to embrace the grief and do all the work you need to do.
Mm. That's beautiful. I agree with you. You also are, when you talk about the labyrinth, you're also talking about metaphor. And, I know that in my experience also, metaphor became really important because sometimes it can describe feelings where words don't really fit. They really don't express the feeling of it. So one of my favorite metaphors early on, and it still works really well, is the idea of the ocean. And sometimes the ocean can take you under, and you have to stop fighting in order to bob back up and to be able to breathe again. And then sometimes you can actually a little bit later surf a wave and actually manage some of the emotions. So that metaphor ends up working really well, and there are plenty of them. But I know that you have a metaphor that several metaphors that you've come up with that work for describing the grief process, and that you've actually come up with some grief workshops that are based on metaphor. Can you explain one of those or share one of those with us?
Um, sure. Last year, I mean, as you saw, spoke of earlier, my uh, the journey to find yourself. Last year, I decided I was going to go and continue a journey that I had started in the late '60s and early '70s of traveling around the country. Wanted to finish seeing all the states, so I went on a 3-month journey by myself with Jared and Spirit. Said Spirit was sitting shotgun. We had no timetables, and I had certain places that I wanted to visit. Um, and Jared was coming along for the ride, and I had a medium reading actually before the journey, and she was medium was telling me of different places that Jared wanted to go, and so we a lot of the things that she told me were going to happen did happen on that journey. But when I was in Canada heading back east, I had come out of the Canadian Rockies, out of Banff, and I had encountered a raven, and an encounter with a raven to me, and I know the raven means a lot to you as well, means that magical things are about to happen. So I was later that day in Saskatchewan, and I was in a storm, and I saw a rainbow starting to form on the left side of the highway, and it just started growing, and it formed a rainbow bridge over the highway, and I could see blue sky, white clouds on the other side of the rainbow, and the bridge was perfectly over the highway, and I was going to pass over it. So I sat there with my phone snapping pictures, and as I went under the rainbow bridge, all of a sudden I felt like Dorothy on the Wizard of Oz. There were 60-mile-an-hour winds. There was hail blowing sideways, and I literally thought I was going to be picked up and taken somewhere else. But I have lived fearlessly since Jared passed. It has taken away the fear in life. I live in love and light now. So I knew that I was going to be all right. I knew that Spirit was with me, and if it was my time to go, I'd go. So I kept driving. I had stopped at one point, but I felt it more dangerous being on the side of the road with trucks passing me and the hail hitting the side of the car. So as I drove, this went on for 47 minutes. And I kept driving, and it was like going through the grief journey. It was experiencing like the hell. It was the most intense storm I'd ever been in. So I was journaling the whole time on my journey. So I started writing about the metaphor to the Wizard of Oz. And the characters. I was thinking of the characters in the Wizard of Oz. Well, the nonprofit that I am co-founder of, Healing Through Hope. I have two partners in that. The Wizard of Oz had meaning to them too.
Oh my
My
gosh.
friend Debbie, her daughter's wedding was coming up. Well, she had bought ruby red slippers for as her thing, and then also Beth had some things coming up to the Wizard of Oz, so we started talking about it in less than a minute. We came up with a series that we ran of meetings, of 5-part series of the metaphor to the yellow brick road,
Oh
to
my
the Wizard
gosh.
of Oz, and
Right.
walking the yellow brick road, like the grief journey, because they all wanted something, but it was something that they had. So we
Oh my
used
gosh.
the lion for courage. You need courage to walk that journey.
Mm.
You need heart, like the Tin Man needed. You need a brain, like the Scarecrow needed. You need the safety or feeling of home, like Dorothy wanted. and you need power like the wizard had. So we just
Mm.
used that metaphor to talk about the grief journey and following your yellow brick road.
Wow, that's fabulous. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. And that just concluded, is that right? That series?
Yeah, we ran that series. It just concluded, I think, in January of this year. And
Wow,
yeah, and
thank you.
now we're doing another metaphor series. But we can come up with a lot of metaphors. They do mean a lot. You
They
can
do
compare
because
a
they
lot of
help you
things.
to stay connected to the journey and to know that that others have felt this way before and that you're not alone. So that, yeah, that's really beautiful. So I want to thank you for talking with me today, and I'll put a couple of links to certainly to your Hope Soars, and then also to Healing Through Hope, so people can get in touch with you if they want to. They can find out more and about what you're doing and when, depending on when they see this. So it's been very delightful to speak with you about something so difficult and so life changing, but here we are smiling. And my loss with Rich is a month prior to yours, and just as a face of hope anyway, 5.5 years out, it's, life continues, and it has meaning by sharing and by finding community, people that you can really connect to and feel something with and share your deepest truths with. So I'm really grateful that I've met you, and really grateful that you've agreed to be on this interview. So
Yeah,
thank you,
and
Bobby.
well, you're welcome, Basha, and thank you for thinking of me and inviting me to come on.
Absolutely.